What kind of personality traits do all gamers seem to have in common?
None, actually. I think gamers are pretty diverse as a group. Maybe they all like to have a little bit of a escapism, but I think that's something that's pretty part of the human condition. So if you ask me the specific personality for a gamer, I'd have a hard time telling you. I can tell you what the stereotype is, that it's somebody that is usually 14 to 20 and has poor social skills and sits at home and doesn't do anything else. But that's pretty much a stereotype. Well, we should back up because I'm not sure about addiction. I think that there's a tendency to use that term a lot, and a lot of times I think it's more about our cultural values. If you were reading Dickens' Bleak House at night for 3 hours and enjoying it and escaping that way, I'm not sure that your parent or your partner would say, oh, you've got a Dickens addiction. And if you watch football on Sunday for several hours a week, I'm not sure that that means you have a football addiction. But because gaming is considered sort of mysterious or geeky or something that not everybody does or knows how to do, it's considered more suspect. So that when we talk about it being an addiction, I think you really want to look at more what the quality of the person's life is and how the quality of their life is either being enhanced by gaming or impacted by it. If somebody is spending 2 hours playing the game but they're feeling really, really revved up and frustrated and angry and they get into fights when they're interrupted, that's more of a problem than if somebody's playing 4 hours and they're with a group of friends that do a raid and they finish up and then they go spend time with their kids. So a lot of times people get kind of caught up in this idea that it's the amount of time, when really I think it's well, it can affect people's lives in a bunch of different ways. Let's talk about the negative ways first. It can distract them from things they need to do, like go to work or spend time with their kids or spend time with their partner. It can distract them from, you know, daily living chores like getting washed up, cooking meals, things like that. It can take up some money and that they may or may not have. It can affect their grades if they're a student and they're not studying as much as they ought to be. So those are some of the negative ways it can affect their lives. Let's also talk though about the positive ways it can affect their lives. It can give them a sense of community that they may not have in the real world. You know, in-world is kind of what we use when we talk about games. But it can, I think about, for example, folks that are in stigmatized populations like GLBT youth or GLBT adults who may not feel like they can come out of the closet, but they can actually be part of a guild that's a gay gaming guild and meet people that way. I think about people that are either disabled and can't leave the house very easily, but they can actually feel very powerful with being a knight vanquishing dragons and things like that. I think about a lot of Iraq vets that I've met online gaming, that it gives them something to deal with the tedium of waiting while they're on duty or coping with the anxiety of being overseas. It gives people that are traveling ways of keeping in contact with friends and relatives because it's sort of free internet access with each other. And then last but not least, this may not seem like a huge population, but there are a lot of folks that have transgender identity concerns, and one of the ways that they sometimes start to experience themselves in the opposite gender is by role-playing. And that, I'm not remembering the statistics exactly, but basically 3/4 of the characters, 3/4 of the players that play, for example, World of Warcraft, are male, and approximately half to a little more than half of the characters played on World of Warcraft are female. So that tells you that there are men that are experiencing some sort of satisfaction or enjoyment out of crossing gender lines while they play the game.
What kinds of games do you see more as addicting? Is it more the competitive side, like a like a Call of Duty or, you know, achievement-based games? Or is it more where you take on, you know, a Second Life or, you know, like a World of Warcraft, Oblivion, you know, D&D, things like that?
Right.
What seems to, you know, be more?
You know, I've actually seen people experiencing problems with lots of different games. I mean, I can't tell you what the most addictive game is. I think it varies by temperament. Some people would love to play Second Life and get absorbed in that for hours and hours and hours. Other people could not stand it because they find it too boring. Then there are people that really like Halo or Call of Duty, and they really get into the adrenaline rush of that. And you know, other people would find that too agitating. So there's not necessarily a particular game. I think one things that people want to always be kind of mindful of is how the progression of a game really can sort of be something you get very caught up in terms of levels or moving forward. You know, going from level 1 to level 80, or I'm not sure how it's done in fantasy football, but I'm imagining there are playoffs and tournaments and finals and semifinals. It's like any sort of token economy that gets set up, whether it be in casinos or online, that there's incremental things that you can do to better yourself. And so that is one of the qualities I think that's probably the most compelling in a game. And you know, you'll notice I'm really shying away from using the word addiction because I'm not quite sure it's an addiction. I think that it really depends on the person and how it's affecting their life. I think if you focus too quickly on the game, you're missing really what happens in terms of addiction, which is the person's circumstances and their temperament. That are you having stress at home? Are you having problems in your life? Are you feeling lonely? Are you having any sort of underlying depression or anxiety that you are trying to find a way to deal with? And then we get the game. It's so that it's not necessarily that there's any one quality that can really hook people. I think that, having said that, video games are getting more and more immersive. They're getting more and more colorful. They're getting more and more pleasing in terms of all of the senses. It used to be that you would just see things and it would be very standard sounds. Now you have 3D graphics and you have all sorts of different sounds. And if you think about the newer game consoles like the Wii, you've got touch and sensation, things vibrating and buzzing. So I think the more you get more sensory stimulation you get, and the more immersive the quality of the game, the more likely you're going to find it compelling. This weekend I went to PAX East, the video game conference, and the technology there was really startling. There were, games that are being played out on 12 consoles all together making one big image, or people doing 3D, which gives you a much more immediate game experience. I think that as the technology improves and it becomes much more of a surrounding experience, it's going to become much more compelling. But I think we have a built-in capacity to seek out escape and seek out enjoyment. And I think that games that are more subtle in their technology may make it easier for us to get immersed. But I don't think we can blame the game for that. I really think that, again, it's equivalent to saying, if you read Bleak House by Dickens, is it, did Dickens do a really good job of making an addictive book? Or is it more that it's a compelling story that people want to lose themselves in?